What if you could go back 2.5 million years ago to the start of our species, Homo sapiens? We're used to dominating the planet, so it might shock you that back then, we were apes of no particular importance. We didn't play a role in the global order. We just lived out our unremarkable lives in East Africa. So how did an animal of no significance come to dominate the planet? In his book, Sapiens, Israeli historian Yuval Noah Harari traces our species back from its unremarkable origins 2.5 million years ago through the modern day and beyond. His sweeping history is full of surprises and counterintuitive insights. It was a sensation when it came out back in 2014, drawing such fans as Bill Gates and Barack Obama.
Part of what makes it so interesting and provocative is that it talks about some core things that have allowed us to build this extraordinary civilization. It gives you a sense of perspective.
Looking into the history of Homo sapiens will make you see the modern world in a totally new way. And Harari's take on our species has profound implications for our future. Harari walks us through 3 giant leaps that take us from where we started to where we are today. The cognitive revolution, the agricultural revolution, and the scientific revolution. We'll explain each one. Our first big leap came 70,000 years ago. Homo sapiens mysteriously gained new powers that made us unusually good at cooperating in large groups. Before this happened, Homo sapiens didn't have any real advantage over any other species. We were just one amongst many. I mean, we weren't even the only humans. We shared the earth with Neanderthals, Denisovans, Homo erectus, and many, many more. And nothing really made us stand out. But then, somehow, we upgraded our brains and gained the upper hand. We spread all over the world, while our cousin species stopped existing altogether. So where did everyone go? There are 2 very different theories. The first theory says that humans merged together by mating with each other. In this scenario, sapiens left Africa and spread throughout Eurasia, making love, not war. They mated with Neanderthals, they mated with Denisovans, they mated with everybody. And over time, after lots and lots of mating, we became modern humans. This means today we're a mixture of all these different species. The second theory paints a less loving picture. It assumes that interbreeding between humans was impossible. We were just too genetically different. So sapiens must have replaced the others, possibly through warfare and ultimately genocide. This means humans are all pure sapiens. The reality is more complicated. For years, scientists favored the replacement theory. But since 2010, we've known that DNA from other species survives in modern humans. This shows that different human species did interbreed, but the DNA percentages are too small to support that they fully merged. Mating did happen, just not all that often. So the true story of how sapiens won out is complicated, and we still don't fully understand it. Maybe sapiens fought other species and killed them off. Maybe they outcompeted them for resources and drove them to extinction. There must have been some mating going on too. The DNA record tells us that. The full story is still being pieced together. But one thing we do know is that sapiens showed remarkable abilities that no other humans had. They all have to do with language. We added 3 skills that other humans probably didn't have, and they helped us thrive while others died out. Let's look at each one. Language itself was never unique to us. It's the complexity of our language that sets us apart. For example, we know monkeys can use simple language to spread the alarm when a leopard shows up. Other human species could probably do that too, but sapiens could do much, much more. We could talk to each other about where the leopard was, what was it doing, and what should we do about it. Complex language made sapiens uniquely good at hiding from predators and catching prey. This gave us a big survival advantage. The cognitive revolution also gave us the ability to gossip. We think of gossip as a bad thing, but it is crucial for building large social groups. You might feel comfortable trusting your sister or your cousin because you know them well, but without word of mouth, how do you know you can trust your cousin's neighbor's uncle's wife? I wouldn't. Gossip is a great way to learn about people that you don't know very well. This is what allowed sapiens to form larger and larger groups. Neanderthals, for example, probably didn't gossip, so they kept their groups small. This made them much more vulnerable if they ever had to fight off invading sapiens. We had power in numbers. They didn't. A third ability, sharing myths, allowed sapiens to coordinate at an even larger scale. Gossip allows you to learn about an acquaintance through word of mouth, but a shared myth can connect you with a complete stranger. Other species stay in the world of tangible reality. A monkey won't give you a banana because you promise him he'll get unlimited bananas in monkey heaven, but Homo sapiens do things like this all the time. Even a city or a kingdom is not a real physical thing. It only exists in the collective mind of the group. Today we share so many powerful stories that we forget that they're based in collective fiction. The United Nations, monetary systems, even ideas like human rights. These are all shared fictions that help us find common cause with people that we've never met. An example of this that I always think about is my college job. I worked for my city's Parks and Recreation, and yes, it is just like the show. It is. Even though I was just some kid with a set of keys, thanks to the magic of a polo shirt, I became a safe resource for information. People believed so much in the shared myth of the city that as long as I was in uniform, they trusted me, which I always found amazing. This is exactly the kind of trust that sapiens used 70,000 years ago to form huge groups. Just picture a battle between 30 Neanderthals and 1,000 sapiens. And you can imagine what a big advantage this was. For tens of thousands of years, we used brain power to out-hunt, out-gather, and outnumber other human species. We spread outward from East Africa, and by 10,000 BC, there were Homo sapiens foraging all over the globe. 5 million of us or so. Then, over the next 10,000 years, sapiens stopped wandering. We moved into permanent settlements and shifted to an even better survival strategy, agriculture. But was it actually better? By the start of the Common Era, basically everyone was farming. Our population had exploded to 250 million, and only about 1 to 2 million of those were still foragers. So, agriculture was obviously superior, right? Actually, not really. Harari calls the idea that farming was better than foraging history's biggest fraud. Why? Well, the population and the food supply exploded, but most of the extra food went to a small group of elites. For everyone else, quality of life actually got worse. They worked harder, they ate less nutritious diets, and got more diseases. So if farming was so bad, why did we switch to it? Well, it wasn't necessarily on purpose. It happened gradually, and probably by accident. The planet was getting warmer, and it started raining more, which helped grains grow better. Humans started gathering more grain and accidentally helped it spread by dropping it as they traveled. People started staying longer at places where lots of grain grew. Eventually, over generations, they settled for good, tending to the grain and storing it for later. Harari even argues that grains like wheat domesticated humans, not the other way around. Eventually, life was harder than it had ever been before, but the people didn't really know that. Many generations had passed by then, and their populations got too big to go back to foraging. Stuck in this new lifestyle, sapiens had to figure out new ways to work together. Before the agricultural revolution, we were nomads. We didn't live in houses, we didn't fence in land to keep it to ourselves, and we couldn't keep a lot of possessions or store a lot of food because nomads were always on the move. Agriculture changed all of this. Human groups got bigger and bigger, and we got more and more possessive. My house, my goat, my wheat. You can see how cooperation started to get complicated. Luckily for us, shared myths were perfect for this new reality. Before, they helped bands of foragers work together to trade or to gang up on some Neanderthals. Now, they allowed rulers to keep entire empires under control. For example, the Babylonian king Hammurabi used a famous legal text to control an empire of over 1 million people. The code says, the gods picked Hammurabi to rule. It breaks the population up into classes and tells the subjects how to behave. These rules didn't exist in nature, they were fiction, but everyone accepted them, and it allowed them to cooperate at a larger scale. 1 million people knew exactly how to behave with each other. The thing is, we do something very similar today in this country. We live by a legal code that doesn't exist as a real physical thing. We invented it, and we all agreed to live by it. Our founding document, the Declaration of Independence, even claims a divine source, just like Hammurabi's Code. With our collective fictions keeping us together, we've used the last 500 years to radically transform our world. We started seeing things in new ways, using scientific principles. This allowed us once again to gain amazing new abilities. It also led to an enormous population increase. In the year 1500, there were about 500 million Homo sapiens. Today, there's almost 8 billion. During that time, we've achieved things that would have been unimaginable to earlier humans. We circumnavigated the globe, discovered bacteria, landed on the moon, and invented the atomic bomb. And we did it all because of a new way of looking at the world, a new emphasis on science. Before the scientific revolution, Sapiens mostly believed their religions told them the full story of the universe. They were satisfied with things staying the way they were. But over the last 500 years, we've adopted a new mindset. We acknowledge our ignorance. We emphasize math and observation, and we strive for new powers. The core of the scientific revolution was that humans don't know everything. We stopped assuming knowledge was settled and started trying to understand the world better. Even today, after 500 years of learning, scientists still admit that they don't understand everything. We're still trying to answer the big questions, like how does consciousness work? Or what caused the Big Bang? And the way we answer our big questions is by observing the world around us and using math to make sense of it. Math is precise and dependable. This allows us to create coherent theories about the world. These mathematic theories are much better at predicting the future than the religious stories Sapiens used to rely on. This is important because in the scientific era, we care a lot about how useful knowledge is to us. We don't just learn things because they're interesting. We use knowledge to develop new powers, especially new technologies. So, for example, Isaac Newton published his 3 laws of motion in 1687. It was really cool that he wrote down symbols that told us more about the world, but what really mattered was that we could use his equations. Anyone could plug in some measurements and predict the movement of a cannonball, or eventually, a rocket. Believing in science meant believing in human progress. We could learn more, we could achieve more, and we could eventually hope to solve any problem we might face. And with every amazing new power science brings us, progress has felt more and more real. Today, pretty much all of us feel like we're working towards solving the world's problems. Before the scientific revolution, Sapiens looked at this attitude as hubris. They told stories like the Tower of Babel about humans being punished for becoming too powerful. But we pretty much stopped worrying that it was wrong to become too powerful. We are constantly coming up with clever solutions to Earth's biggest problems. One that's near and dear to my heart is the disappearance of our coral reefs. As a former coral grower myself, scientists recently developed a very promising new method of regrowing reefs that's actually based on a technique that hobbyists like me use, fragmenting coral to sell or trade with other people. This method could be the key to repopulating reefs, and it's just one of the many innovative things people are doing for the planet right now. What's a little scary is that all this problem solving could mean the end of our species. We're gaining abilities to fundamentally change things about ourselves. Before too long, we'll be powerful enough to create something that's no longer Homo sapiens. Scientists have already implanted genes from a fluorescent green jellyfish into a rabbit embryo to produce glow-in-the-dark bunnies. It's only a matter of time until we have the ability to engineer ourselves in the same way. How long will it be before we make Homo sapiens into something completely new? So as we look back on the history of Homo sapiens and forward to whatever we become next, we need to ask ourselves, what do we really want? Who do we want to be? We are the designers of the next phase in our history, so the answers to these questions will determine our future. So, that's the history of Homo sapiens. From our origins 2.5 million years ago, all the way up to our uncertain future. 3 great leaps explain how we went from an unremarkable human species to the dominant force on the planet. Natural selection gave us powerful language. Cultural evolution gave us farming and science. Biological engineering might turn us into a new species altogether. Harari's sweeping history goes into so many fascinating ideas that we don't have time to cover in this video. From human happiness, to mass extinction, to the invention of money. If you're interested in going deeper, check out the Shortform Guide to Sapiens. Shortform makes the world's best guides to nonfiction books. They're like book summaries on steroids. You can get a 5-day trial and a discounted annual subscription if you go to shortform.com/YouTube. Click the link in the description below. And support the author and publisher by buying Sapiens. A link to the book is below as well. And finally, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next short form video. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.